The baby had been crying for nearly an hour. Not the sharp, startled cry of pain, but the weak, rasping sound of something small running out of strength. It echoed through the one-room ranch house like wind through a cracked coffin. Eli Mercer stood at the rough pine table, hands braced against it, staring at nothing. The lantern flame trembled, throwing shadows across the walls, his wife's shadow among them. Or maybe that was just his grief playing tricks again. He hadn't slept in 3 days. The plains outside his ranch were flat and endless, the kind of land that swallowed men whole and never bothered to remember their names. Dust pressed against the windows like a living thing. Somewhere beyond the dark, a coyote laughed. Eli crossed the room and looked down at the crib he'd built with his own hands. The baby's face was red and wet, tiny fists opening and closing like it was trying to grab onto life itself. "I know," Eli muttered, voice breaking. "I know." He lifted the bottle again, tipped it gently, though he already knew it was useless. Goat's milk, watered down, everything the doctor in Santa Fe had told him not to rely on. But the doctor was 2 days' ride away and buried his wife on the way out. Mary had died bringing the boy into the world, bled out on the same bed they'd shared for 8 years. Eli pressed his forehead to the crib rail. He had buried outlaws. He had buried friends. He had buried men who screamed and begged. But nothing had hollowed him like covering his wife's face with a sheet while their child wailed beside her. The baby coughed, the sound thin and desperate. Eli straightened. That was when he heard the knock. Not loud, not demanding, just 3 steady taps against the door. His hand went instinctively to the revolver on the table. No one knocked out here unless they wanted something or meant harm. "Go on," he called. "Ranch is empty." A pause. Then a woman's voice, calm, low. "I heard a child crying." Eli froze. He crossed the room and cracked the door, revolver hidden behind his leg. She stood there wrapped in a faded Apache shawl, dust clinging to her moccasins. Her hair was braided tight, streaked with gray despite her youth. Her eyes were dark, steady, unafraid. She did not look like someone asking permission. "I have milk," she said simply. Eli stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. "Your wife is gone," she continued, not unkindly. "Your child is hungry. He will not last the night." Eli felt anger flare, hot and sharp. "You don't know a damn thing about—" The baby cried again, louder this time. The woman's gaze shifted past him toward the crib. "I lost 2 children on the trail south," she said. "I will not listen to another die." Silence stretched between them, thick as dust. Eli knew what the world would say if they saw her inside his home, knew what the ranchers would whisper, knew what the men in town would do if they thought he'd gone soft. But he also knew the sound of a dying animal, and his son was making it. Eli stepped aside. She did not thank him. Inside, she moved with purpose, kneeling beside the crib. Her hands were gentle, practiced. The baby quieted almost instantly, small mouth finding what it had been starving for. The sound that followed wasn't crying. It was life. Eli sat heavily in the chair by the table, hands shaking. Outside, hooves thundered in the distance. Men rode hard at night for only one reason, and every instinct Eli Mercer had told him this woman's arrival was not an accident. The frontier had a way of collecting debts, and it had just knocked on his door, not the restless, twitching half-sleep of hunger, but the deep, heavy stillness of a body that had finally found what it needed. His tiny chest rose and fell beneath the blanket, lips still parted, a faint milk-sweet breath filling the room. Eli Mercer watched him from the corner like a man guarding a fire in hostile country. The Apache woman sat on the floor near the hearth, her back straight, hands resting loosely in her lap. She hadn't asked for water, hadn't asked for food. She simply existed, as if she had always belonged in the room, and the ranch had merely forgotten it. "You got a name?" Eli asked finally. She lifted her eyes to him. "Atsa." He nodded once. "I'm Eli." "I know." That unsettled him more than the knock had. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the smell of horses. Sweat, leather, iron. Men who rode hard and didn't care who heard them coming. Atsa's head tilted slightly. She'd heard it too. "They're close," she said. Eli stood and crossed to the window, peering through the grime-streaked glass. Lanterns bobbed in the distance, 3, maybe 4. Riders spread wide like wolves testing a fence line. "Who are they?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. Men who believe this land belongs only to them, she said at last. Men who think mercy is weakness. Eli's jaw tightened. He knew that kind of man, had ridden with them once, drank with them, buried a few. Why you? He pressed. Atsa rose smoothly to her feet. Because I did not die when they expected me to. The riders stopped just beyond the corral. One of them laughed, low and cruel. Another spat into the dirt. A knock came again, this time louder, demanding. Mercer, a voice called. We know you're home. Eli closed his eyes briefly. That voice belonged to Clay Harlan. Once Clay had saved Eli's life outside Abilene. Once Eli had trusted him with his back. Now Clay wore authority like a badge cut from bone. Enforcer for the crossbar. Syndicate. Men buying land with bullets instead of deeds. Eli opened the door before Clay could knock again. Lantern light spilled across the porch. Clay sat his horse easy, reins loose, confidence carved into every line of him. Two other riders flanked him, rifles resting casual across their saddles. Evening, Eli, Clay said. Heard you'd been having trouble. Eli leaned against the doorframe. Ain't your concern. Clay's eyes flicked past him sharp. Heard a baby crying. Didn't figure you for the domestic sort. Lost my wife, Eli said flatly. Anything else you want to say it. Clay's smile thinned. That's so, shame. One of the riders sniffed the air. Smells like smoke. And something else. Clay's gaze hardened. We're tracking an Apache woman. Came through here tonight. You see anyone like that? Silence pressed in, heavy as a held breath. Eli felt the weight of the revolver at his hip. Felt the house behind him, the crib, the sleeping child, the woman who had kept him alive. No, Eli said. Clay studied him for a long moment. You lying to me, Eli? Eli met his eyes. You calling me a liar? The tension snapped tight, a wire ready to cut. Clay chuckled softly. You always did have a stubborn streak. That's why I'll give you one chance. He leaned forward in the saddle. Step aside. Let us look. Atsa appeared behind Eli then, silent as smoke. Clay saw her instantly. Everything changed. His hand moved fast, but Eli was faster. The gunshot tore the night open. One rider screamed as he pitched backward off his horse, blood blooming across his chest. The horses reared, chaos breaking loose in an instant. God damn it, Eli! Clay shouted, drawing his pistol. Atsa moved like a shadow, grabbing the lantern and hurling it into the dry grass. Flame leapt up hungry, racing with the wind. Eli fired again, splintering wood, forcing the riders back. Bullets tore through the porch post. One grazed Eli's arm, hot and screaming. Clay swore, hauling his horse around. Burn it down, he roared. I want that ranch ash by morning. They retreated hard, dragging the wounded man with them, hooves pounding the earth into thunder. The fire spread fast. Eli slammed the door, coughing as smoke poured in. We gotta move now. Atsa was already at the crib, lifting the baby, wrapping him tight against her chest. They fled out the back as flames climbed the walls, sparks rising into the black sky like dying stars. From the ridge, Eli watched his home burn. Everything he'd built, everything he'd buried, gone. Atsa stood beside him, the baby sleeping between them, warm and alive. You chose, she said quietly. Eli nodded, eyes reflecting fire. Guess I did. In the distance, Clay Harlan's laughter carried on the wind. And Eli Mercer knew there would be no turning back.